morning. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, we saw President Trump commute Roger Stone over the weekend, but Sean, now some are asking, will the president pardon his former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn?
Yeah, that's right. Trump says that he could pardon Flynn depending on how his case goes and whether or not it ultimately gets dismissed. Here's what the president had to say.
I think he was persecuted. He didn't lie. Turned out he didn't lie. The FBI said he didn't lie. I think he was persecuted, and nobody understands what's going on with the Justice Department, which is so capable. They decided to take a view on it, and they decided that he should be. They were going to drop the case.
Well, this all comes after the Justice Department requested that Judge Emmett Sullivan drop the case against Flynn. However, as you know, we've been covering this for a while, Judge Sullivan has been reluctant to do that and, in fact, asked the full Court of Appeals to reconsider the decision. Flynn's lawyer, Sidney Powell, said for the rule of law to be upheld, this case needs to be dropped because the case against Flynn was made up anyway. Trump's former national security advisor initially pled guilty, as you recall, to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian. But it's been very clear that he was strong-armed into making that guilty plea. This all comes after the president commuted the prison sentence for former longtime friend of his, Roger Stone. Stone, as you recall, was set to begin serving his sentence in prison later this month. He was convicted of a litany of charges stemming from the Mueller probe, but was then exonerated by President Trump. Joining me now is Newsmax analyst and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz. Alan's also the author of Guilt by Accusation, The Challenge of Proving Innocence in the Age of Me Too. Alan, I do believe the book is still available for free on Amazon. Is that true? I don't want to get on the wrong side.
Free on Kindle. Just press the button, read it, and you'll see that I've been falsely accused. Please read it. I appreciate it.
You bet, of course. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I am getting my own little law degree here because first they charge Flynn, then the DOJ says, hey, we were wrong, all this evidence came out, we want to drop the charges. The judge says, I'm not going to let you drop the charges, I'm going to take it to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. The appeals court tells the judge to do his job and to drop the case. Then the judge says that I'm not going to listen to you, I want the full D.C. Court of Appeals to hear it. Where is this going, and do you think it ends up in the Supreme Court?
It might. I mean, Judge Sullivan has to go back to first-year law school and begin to understand our system of separation of powers. Judges don't get to bring cases. Judges don't get to appeal cases. It is utterly unseemly for this man in robes to be hiring another lawyer, a former judge, to appeal. Appeals are supposed to be done by the defendants in the case, or in appropriate cases by the government. But our system of government limits courts to deciding cases and controversy. That is, when the government says one thing and the defendant says another, hey, the court has to decide it. They're umpires. But this umpire wants to get up at bat. He wants to be the pitcher, the catcher, the designated hitter, and the outfielder all at the same time. He's a judge. Do your job. Decide. Don't advocate and litigate. And what would happen if, in any event, it got returned? Could this judge now sit on the case? This advocate in robes now say, now I'm going back to my original position. I'm no longer an advocate. I'm no longer appealing. Now I'm going to be a judge because I now have the power to enforce what I asked the court to enforce. That would be so unseemly and so improper.
Yeah, I don't understand how the judge could now go back and hear the case again in an unbiased way. He's been pretty obvious where he stands on this. But, Professor, here's the thing that I think is also interesting. Last week, Sidney Powell, as part of new information that came out, disclosed that these FBI agents, in their notes to the DOJ, said that General Flynn was forthright and appeared to be telling the truth. So this whole narrative that he lied and then pled guilty, which is what the left keeps saying, keeps falling apart week by week as new evidence continues to come out that shows that Flynn, according to the FBI's own notes, was forthright.
Well, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. Right in the beginning, when he was first indicted, I said he did not commit a crime. I didn't see a lie here. I didn't see materiality here. I urged him not to plead guilty. He now has a great lawyer. She's terrific, and she's making all the right arguments. Let me tell you the problem he faces, though. Here's the problem he faces. Let's assume it goes all the way up to the Court of Appeals en banc, and they rule whatever way they rule. Then it goes up to the Supreme Court. Then let's assume, hypothetically, the Supreme Court then sends it back for a trial who knows at that point who the president will be and whether or not that president will commute or pardon. So he's taking a little bit of a risk here.
Well, of course he is. It's beat the clock. I think that the folks at DOJ who want to get Flynn, who want to get Trump, are exactly doing that, which is trying to say, let's prolong this, and hope for a win, a Biden win, and then a new DOJ does exactly that, re-prosecutes it, and says the old DOJ wanted to drop it, we don't.
Yeah, and Stone may have the same issue. Remember, Stone didn't want a pardon. He wanted a commutation. He wants to win the appeal. But if he wins the appeal, the case goes back for a new trial. And if there's a new trial, even though his sentence has been commuted, that commutation wouldn't apply to the new trial. And so he'd either have to serve his sentence if he was convicted or persuade whoever the president might be, President Trump or his successor, at that point, issue a commutation. So Stone's a pretty gutsy guy because he probably could have gotten a pardon if he asked for it.
Can I just say that, is he gutsy, or is that not the brightest thing? In other words, if I got my sentence commutated, I would take it, walk away, go pop a couple bottles of beer open, celebrate, and walk away. The idea of saying I want a retrial, and to your point, that's like winning the lottery and then buying lottery tickets all over again. I mean, you win it once. Smart money is to kind of just take it and enjoy it.
Well, if you think you're totally innocent, I fully understand why he says, I don't want my record to be as a felon. It's not the advice I would give him, but as a criminal lawyer, you always understand the client gets to make the decision in the end, not the lawyer. So although I don't agree with his decision, I understand it, and I do think it takes guts. And the difference between guts and foolishness sometimes is very much a matter of degree.
Yeah, but I'm all for guts and wanting to prove innocence. But if I'm Stone and I'm watching what's happened to Flynn, I go, I don't want to take my chances with these guys that have the full force of the government after me. No matter how innocent I am, I get it. I think it takes a lot of guts. You want to clear your name, but there might be other ways to do it. This is a lot to risk. Let me ask you this on Flynn's case. If you were advising him right now, based on what you've seen that happened with Stone, would you argue that Flynn should make an appeal to the president for either a pardon or an advanced commutation?
I don't think he has to do that yet. He may have to do that on this, January 19th, depending on the outcome of the election. But I think at this point, he's well advised to follow the legal process. It's unpredictable whether the Court of Appeals on Bank will grant review. If they do, whether they'll reverse the lower court, what the Supreme Court would do. We could be years and years and years into litigation about this. While we're talking about this, I want to mention one other case that's in the news, if that's okay. And that is Cohen, Michael Cohen. He's sent to jail. This is the United States of America. We don't send people to solitary confinement because they want to write a book. Nelson Mandela was sent to solitary confinement. Solzhenitsyn was sent to solitary confinement. Martin Luther King was sent to jail where he wrote his great letter. But in the United States of America, to send somebody, whether you like him or hate him, the idea that he's handcuffed and taken to solitary because he won't sign a form that says, I'm not going to write my book. First Amendment has to have some impact here. I'm so worried about what's going on with our Constitution. And you don't have to pick sides. You can hate the defendant, like the defendant. What I see is liberty, our constitutional rights being endangered by the weaponization of our criminal justice system.
Let me ask you one quick question. With respect to Michael Flynn, I've said this before, KT McFarland has said this before, that he was pressured into pleading guilty. Can he or should he come out and explain why he pled guilty? And I don't have a lot of time, Professor, but I just want to know, as a legal strategy, would it be a good idea to say, I want to explain why I pled guilty? It's because they were coming after me, they were coming after my family, they were going to bleed me dry. Is that a smart strategy?
For his lawyer to do it. I wouldn't at this point say anything himself, but I think his lawyer should make that point and make it eloquently, and that he was pressured. But remember, people are pressured to plead guilty all the time. We have a system where if you plead guilty, you sometimes get 1/10 the sentence that you would get if you pleaded not guilty and went to trial. That's called the trial penalty. So yes, he was pressured, but he has better arguments than that. He's making them effectively through his excellent lawyers.
Okay. All right, Professor, thank you very much for coming on and explaining this. Like I said, I feel like I get some kind of a legal degree every time you come on. So thank you
with an A+.
for breaking this down.
So, good.
Well, I'm definitely going to enroll then. All right, coming up, Florida continues to see a spike in coronavirus cases, and more states issue restrictions against the Florida state. We're going to talk about how that might impact the Republican convention. We're also going to be looking at the rise in crime while Democrats continue their calls to defund the police. And later, the struggle to reopen schools. We'll talk about what they may look like in the fall. That and more when we return.